Okay, so today we return with Filling as It Burns. And I'm going to start out a little bit differently than I have recently. So I've been subjecting Travis generally to some sort of clip at the start of these shows. And today I'm going to read a little bit, a small excerpt of 2 paragraphs spaced out a little bit in the first section of the Communist Manifesto that I think could help kick off the conversation today. So I got a little carried away reading here and ended up reading too much. There's a link to a copy of the Communist Manifesto in the description. I recommend you just read the whole first section and you'll basically be caught up. Here's the big part here. On the
feel
one
like
hand,
we got a culmination coming
we got
here.
a juicy one. And how does the bourgeoisie get over these crises? On the one hand, by enforced destruction of a mass of the productive forces. On the other, by the conquest of new markets, and by the more thorough exploitation of the old ones. That is to say, by paving the way for more extensive and destructive crises, and by diminishing the means whereby crises are prevented.
Yes, that does not sound like the entirety of the economic system that we've known for our adult life. Like, we're seeing this as it's narrowing down towards its inevitable conclusion. It seems like. Because the valleys between these rifts become smaller and smaller. Like, just like the way with weather patterns, we're getting 100-year floods now every 12 years, like.
Right. Yeah. The cycle, it's cyclical, but it's not always like the.
It's cyclical, but it's not linear.
It's cyclical, but it's not it spirals inward towards a point, as you're saying, of some point where it can no longer contain itself. Which it's interesting. I think what's really interesting about these 2 paragraphs also is that, again, in the sort of the irony of Marx. He writes about actually some of the successes of capitalism, of a free trade environment where we've basically thrown off the shackles of an older feudal system that itself was. Well,
it depends on what you call success, though, too, because in the next breath he goes on, or maybe it's the previous breath, to mention specifically, like, why is it that basically our net worth is how we measure one's capital. Like,
but it's like it's an acknowledgement of like positive things that can happen in the overthrowing of an old system. So like there's the grind, the consistent grind of people basically trying to advocate for their own rights as humans and have some piece of what these these people at the top are taking for themselves. And there's that slow grind, and every once in a while it gets to a point of inflection where there's like actual social upheaval that changes things for the better, such as, for example, the Civil War.
Cleansing but destructive force.
Exactly. A cleansing but destructive force.
And a forest fire, wake, like.
And in its wake, we don't know necessarily what's coming. Like the early ideals, it's sort of like just like the founding of this country in general. The early ideals of this country are in a lot of ways, as they're written down on paper, very laudable and appreciable. But
absolutely,
in function in practice over time, those definitions and change, and those ideals change as well.
And you could say the same with communism, and that's always been the historical knock on it, joke, whatever you want to call it, is it works great on paper, but
right, but it's never been. Much.
I I mean, like, I feel like they acknowledge that it would take the cataclysmic destruction of capitalism itself to create the proper environment for a truly communistic society to flourish and develop.
I think that
I feel like they even said something specifically to that effect. Like, It'll ride in on the tails of the destruction of capitalism.
I think that destruction doesn't have to be cataclysmic for the society as much as
Well,
like the
no, not
people, or
necessarily
rather
for
the people in it.
capitalism. A
As far
cataclysm
as,
for the system of
but for
capitalism.
yeah, absolutely, because like there definitely are like communistic incrementalists, especially at the time that
Yeah,
the
for sure.
manifesto would have been written. Um, people working with social democrats of the time, and
and exactly what our democracy was going to become. Like, democracy and communism aren't necessarily mutually exclusive in a way. Like, and there's
right,
ways that could have incrementally worked into our form of government, and there are people that advocated for that. Like,
right,
a number of
yeah.
famous ones, like, in fact, like Jack London and others. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, even into the modern era, I mean, that's largely Bernie Sanders. I mean, there's he's a social democrat. He's a bit of a mild incrementalist, but
Yeah, it's getting
yeah,
pretty adjacent.
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't. I also thought that last sentence, uh, by paving the way for more extensive and more destructive crises, and by diminishing the means whereby crises are prevented. And those crises
That's like
take,
repealing Glass-Steagall
mm,
after you had stock market crashes. And let's see, how do we prevent the next one? Oh, I know. We pull away the rules that prevented
yeah,
next one from
we
happening.
got the regulatory state around it, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not just financial places that we see, in the economy directly. uh, we see this kind of behavior, like these kind of crises recur, and the means to avoid them get chipped away at. But so you recently in your area had some bad storms, which cut out power for a lot of people, destroyed a lot of property.
Yep.
Just last week, up here in St. Louis, this would have been, I actually have the date. It was the 16th. We had tornadoes come through, killed 5 people, destroyed 5,000, damaged 5,000 properties, destroyed a great many of those.
Yeah. I happened to be in Nashville that weekend, pretty close to the part of Kentucky where the storms drove through, and it's
Yeah,
amazing that mid-20s was only the number of people that died, because just to see the footage and the aftermath of it is just like unbelievable. Like, it's
yeah,
you guess dozens, you know.
yeah. I think it was like 23 to 25 people in Kentucky,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that. Yeah, it was intense. Definitely for what happened here in St. Louis, we're lucky on the numbers, because a widespread news story around here about the tornadoes was the lack of sirens. There are a lot of people in the St. Louis area that complained about the tornado sirens not going off at
Oh no.
all, or with plenty of time to give people ample warning to actually reach shelter, such that St. Louis Mayor Kara Spencer actually, let's see, the person that was in charge of this was removed from their position, and the mayor changed the responsibility to rest in the hands of local fire departments, because fire departments are actually manned 24 hours a day, unlike the post that would hit the tornado sirens for alerting the local population. That is not a 24/7 post. That is actually a person that has to go through
Wow.
a channel of communication to eventually get to a fire station anyways, so that they can hit the tornado siren for the local area. And that is based off of I'm sure a couple of waves of, or a couple layers of
Backroom
bureaucratic,
political dealings, yeah.
right,
But
as
and
opposed to an
bureaucratic,
immediate response.
yeah.
as opposed to immediate
Wow,
response
that's-
to the NWS suggesting that
Yeah.
issuing a tornado warning. So Doge
Huh.
cuts, threats of privatizing the National Weather Service. For us in the area that we live in, as well as everybody that lives in the United States, but for sure, people that live in Tornado Alley, people that live in
Depend
areas
on
that are
it
hit with hurricanes, yeah,
dramatically.
absolutely. And the best news coverage, or not, the best moment to moment coverage that I found of the storms also was not from a local news source, nor was it from any sort of governmental agency. It was from a YouTube streamer, Ryan Hall, who does fantastic work. Works with a team of a lot of people. They donate a lot of their money and effort to helping people recover from storms and things like that. He was doing second to second readouts of the explanations of the radar readouts, and telling people exactly where tornado signatures were and things like that. And this guy streams on days like the 16th. He'll stream for 8, 9, 13, 14 hours, just in that kind of range, depending on how long it takes for the storms to abate and for people to be out of danger.
In it to win it.
It's an incredible resource, but it's sad in a way that it's got to be on a YouTube streamer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of we're cutting huge amounts of money. I forget the particular out from NOAA. That is where the data that all of these different forecasters, weather services, what have you, that data gets shared with everybody.
Yeah.
For everyone's benefit. But the capital, the commercial gains around that are amazing. Yeah, we're spending the money into this system and not getting a direct return on it, but the ROI that's being generated for the economy based on all these different weather services and weather channels and weather this and that and the other, plus all the need we have for that forecasting data for air travel and military purposes. A whole plethora of other ways where the ROI is huge, massively exceeds every dollar that we put into it.
Yeah.
And we're cutting off that. And it's, in the grand scheme of things, just like tiny decimal points on our overall budget. But
well, and that's just it. At the end of the day, all of this completely it completely opposes the notion that we need to run government like a business, because it doesn't do things that a business does. If anything, it enables, like as you're saying, it enables their in the.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Okay. All right. So to continue what I was saying, anyways, so what I was saying, all of this betrays the notion that we should run government like a business, because the government does things that a business wouldn't do. And as you're saying, indicating before, it enables businesses to even exist in this space because it creates an environment where people can do commerce safely and
a classic example being like highways and shit. Yeah, we're paying money for that, but we're not getting money directly out of it. Oh no. Well, yeah, look at all this commerce that would never be possible in the absence of this network of highways that we agree to maintain across state lines, specifically for the capacity for commerce that it creates for all of us nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a bazillion ways where that plays out in different ways where the ROI on putting it into like the IRS, for example, another place where we're strategically gutting it to avoid enforcing the people that can afford to find ways out of paying taxes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But leaves intact the people that go after small time tax fraud or even just accidents. But yeah, every dollar you put into the IRS yields a huge return.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going after people like them, so can't have that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like they want to hamstring these things just enough that it won't hurt them, but they don't have any problem with the continued subjugation of the lower classes.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the same things happening judicially as well. They're kind of kneecapping the judicial system as a whole in a way, especially through these weird little backdoor shit like what they're doing with the budget right now. Somehow through the budget reconciliation process, kneecapping any enforcement mechanism that the court system has.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was striking the ability for courts to hold someone in contempt for basically avoiding a court order, which
Injunctions. It removes the contempt clause for injunctions and other things like that. So yeah, there's no enforcement mechanism if you can't levy any sort of financial penalty or force any sort of injunction. Like,
which itself is interesting because that was that exact question basically had come up at the Supreme Court very recently, and there was like some really we should pick that up as a subject because that's something I would want to study a little bit more into the specifics of what exactly the argument was that was made to the Supreme Court, because it wasn't precisely the question um if it was legal to
they kind of punted on it in a weird way.
It was
forget
about
the specifics as well, but they didn't take on the direct implication of the case. They punted on the larger issue and ruled on a little statutory clause on.
Well, they didn't punt on the larger issue. They just couldn't. They in that case that was brought up, it wasn't there. And in fact, as I recall, it was Katani Brown that was imploring them to just go ahead and just bring. No, actually, I think it was maybe it was Kagan that talked. I don't know, from what I can't recall who it was, but basically was imploring them, just like, hey, you should just basically just be bringing the broader question to us.
Yeah,
but you won't do that because what they're trying to do is basically get it individualized, as opposed to looking at it in this this class term, this larger general term. It's basically, okay, so we ignored the court order on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, for example, right? And we could shop courts around, we could shop around the courts until we get the decision we want on that one. And then, and if that fails, well, it's the next person. Then the next instances this comes up, and over and over and over again. It is interesting that they sneak this into the budget also too. It's so hypocritical, but we see it all the time from Republicans. The constant complaining about Democrats bringing bills that are too large, that they don't have enough time to study or read or whatever, that are full of poison pills. That's like, I think their favorite term is poison pills. And
that's been getting thrown back in their face a lot of late. There's just some blatant ass hypocrisy going on that.
Yes. Yeah, it's so it's so overwhelmingly blatant
But it's not
that
the first time that they've done exactly this either. Like, everybody forgets that they've already ceded the moral high ground on that one and done this exact fucking maneuver. Not necessarily on a budget reconciliation process, but like this isn't brand new ground either. And somehow they still get to like play that card or pretend to have that moral high ground
didn't
there. I
they
don't know.
try to slip was it there was some reproductive rights thing I believe they tried to slip into a budget bill, but it happens all the time basically. It really
Yeah,
like
that's
legitimately
typical
both
slimy gamesmanship, and yeah,
right,
both
and both
sides.
sides participated in some of that slimy gamesmanship, but
Yeah.
certainly when your whole shtick is complaining about specifically that, doing it is pretty heinous.
But I mean, there's so many instances on a broader scale and on individual levels of them doing exactly that and suffering no repercussions whatsoever.
I mean,
Like,
just Ted
so,
Cruz, just his, just
his
him, just
general
his
existence,
existence
yeah,
is that
it's baffling for one.
he
I
is
mean,
full of doublespeak. He
oh
is
gosh, yeah.
pure doublespeak. Like maybe
There
he
is
is just as
not a
evil as the rest of them.
conviction to be had in that man anywhere.
Right, exactly.
Not a single conviction whatsoever. Oh, just a
But yeah, on
fucking moral jellyfish of a human being. Like,
he is fairly like amorphously blobbish looking in the face too.
right? There's something there.
So on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which its name itself is, it's just crass beyond euphemism at this point. Over 1,000 pages. Basically your standard cut everything that could help a person. It's basically it's basically the standard Republican shit on gas.
The
Cuts to
numbers
Medicaid, cuts to
are
Medicare,
fucking
cuts to SNAP.
staggering.
They're huge. They're insane. And
if this goes through in the format that it's in now, I know I've like been pretty henny penny, the sky is falling at times. But if it goes through at these numbers, that is going to be beyond devastating. Healthcare systems are going to fail. Not just hospitals, systems. Large systems are not going to be able to withstand that economic strain. Are going to fail. So, like, fucking Mayo Clinic might fail. EJC might fail. Like, name any big healthcare provider. And, like, the insurance companies that go along with those. The insurance companies obviously depend on those markets existing to make all their money. All of these, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face to a just radical degree, it seems, for some reason. Like,
well, and it's another it's another place where they're accepting the exploitation of people for the furtherance of a different market. So helping people medically is not going to be profitable. It just really it kind of just can't. You kind of have to accept that.
So is this like a purposeful culling of the population because they know that AI is right there on the on the verge of being ready to take over so much of our?
No, because it's not. Because the AI is not.
No.
It's nowhere close to that. We're very far from like a Matrix style overthrowing either by a billionaire bourgeois at the control of the robots or by the robots just themselves.
Well, yeah, like it all ends up coming back to this Yarvin and the whole network state bullshit like that. But and that's very dependent on having AI and some other systems in place to replace us wage slaves, by and large, anyway. To the manageable levels that they need of us to exist.
Well, so we've already, I mean, just looking at birth rates and stuff, we've already been doing that in a lot of places. Just naturally, though it is sort of at odds
Yeah, but
with
globally, it's still we're on a massive upward
globally,
trajectory.
but they're not trying to start the capitalistic state in, Libya. They're trying to start it here.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, but I mean, yeah.
there are seedlings of this in various places. Latin America is one that they've actually one of the early places that they want to get into. It's part of why Greenland ties into all this bullshit because they want to have a footprint there for shipping, mining, and various other purposes. But no, there's from what I've read, there seems to be a handful of places scattered around that are being outright considered for those purposes, for their little like city, state, company store, state kind of places.
Mm-hmm. Well, so God, that leads me so many places in my head. Well, to back up a little bit, the cuts I think to Medicare, Medicaid, and how that
Yep.
will affect the healthcare system. I think for the wealthy among us, they'll still have access to quality healthcare because they have money. That's going to still be there. There will be an apparatus for that. They will fly wherever they need to fly for it. They will maintain, they have the money to maintain service for themselves. It's
True.
you lose money when you start helping all those damn poors. But the industry
Well, that class of people
assists,
also knows. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say the industry that it helps is the basically like all the snake oil, the supplements, nutraceutical, whatever, like brain power enhancements,
Yeah.
chips that you'll get, implanted into your brain to help it be more performant and make your dick bigger or whatever. Like it that kind of snake oil bullshit is exactly what RFK Jr. loves. That is his shit. And though he is apparently falling from grace for some people, he hasn't fully slowed down. One of their golden boys, Joe Rogan, that's what he built his empire off of. It wasn't just people listening to his fucking podcast where he has sexual assaulting assholes on it for random interviews all the way to having like Bernie Sanders on it the next day or some shit. Like just this wide range of guests. It's not just that, it's the shit that he sells through that vessel. Like all his, I forget what it was, but he was selling like kettlebells. He's selling like brain enhancement supplements. I'm sure various types of male enhancement, testosterone stuff. Like,
a ludicrous amount of that. Sure.
And these guys, whether they like it or not, no matter how intelligent they seem, every single one of these like weirdo Elon Musk adjacent kind of billionaire assholes, every single one of them in this like newer breed, so like under 60, under 50 mostly, those guys are ate up with this shit. They love weird diets and selling it and consuming it, or at least pretending to consume it. They love to give the air.
Peter Thiel is a perfect example of this. Like that dude is ate up with like a supplement and every other crazy treatment you can think of to try and live to 150 years old or whatever, become immortal.
And most of the time, it just seems like what these guys do is they do a couple of cycles of fucking HGH, go to the gym regularly, and pretend to only eat meat all the time, when in actuality, if that's what they did, they would shit themselves to death. Like it
depends. I mean, the human body can adapt to extremely protein heavy diets like that, but I mean, like it's more than just eating hamburger and rice all day. Like
yeah. A lot of these guys don't even do like full on carnivore. Eggs,
or
meat. That's it. You know what I mean? Like butter. They get some butter in there. But I still think the vast majority of that is just full on. It's cosplay. They're
Yeah.
role playing. They're having fun,
Yeah,
and they're making a
100%.
bunch of money playing pretend.
No, I agree.
That might be a little conspiratorial though, in the idea of like that is the industry that's maybe being actually directly assisted by the failure of of the health industry, because people are gonna not stop looking for ways to help themselves. They're not gonna stop looking for treatments for their ailments because being in pain sucks, like whatever form that pain takes.
Yeah, and I mean, that'd be all well and good if it was just a matter of leading our society towards like trying to be a little bit more holistic or proactive like that, even if it is kind of misguided or foolhardy at times. If it was a matter of like, yeah, doing that for the right reasons, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's no amount of that replaces fucking chemotherapy or fucking insulin if you're an insulin dependent diabetic or
vaccines.
Any number of fucking
vaccines are the big one. Like people
also
in that cast, like that cast of thinking either they know and they're just like evil or they just completely underestimate the value of mass vaccinations in this country. How many people's lives that not only saved but also enhanced because they didn't get stricken with something that would take away the use of their limbs, or just
from a
having
self-preservation standpoint. Why do you not want to get rid of that in the society at large to decrease your chance of getting it? If I live in a society where polio isn't a risk at all, is way more comforting to me than like just having the ability to treat it if I get the polio. Like,
well, it's exactly why like there's so many fucking Republicans that are like staunchly anti-gay until it comes out that their sister's second cousin came out at a family reunion, and now
they don't care until it affects them. But
until it affects them, it's super myopic. I didn't get polio, so why the fuck do I care about the polio vaccine? I didn't get the measles.
I think that's actually why that this specifically is going on with the diseases like this, because there's a certain amount of like forgetting after being 2 generations removed from it. People just completely fucking forget it, and really showing people actual video is one of the few things that will move the needle. You can tell people all the statistics in the world, but until you actually show people what a baby that looks like that has whooping cough and dying from having whooping cough, like actually seeing video of that, can move the needle for people a little bit. But like the statistics of dead children, it fucking means nothing to them. Whatever. If it means I don't have to get this stupid vaccine, like.
Numbers.
It's just so myopic. In so many ways, like.
Well, numbers are hard.
Numbers are hard. But jeez.
To some degree, I'm sympathetic to that, but I don't know. It's a little bit tough for me because
numbers are hard, but not like which number is bigger than the other number. Like that's pretty easy. Generally,
and when you're talking about human suffering and death, for me personally, it doesn't take a whole lot of convincing to try to avoid those things. Like,
it's not a difficult trolley scenario here. You only have to choose between like people dying and people not dying. Which side do I choose? The side that kills a whole bunch of people, or the side that doesn't kill anybody?
Yeah. If we vaccinate everyone, 50,000 people will die. If we don't, 5 million people will die. Well, yeah, but those 50,000 people are going to die either way. So might as well let 5 million people die.
Yep,
what?
That makes perfect sense. Same rationale.
Yeah, it is extremely
Okay.
myopic, like you said, and just yeah, we are constantly dealing with battling with the fact that we are 2 decades out from maybe reaching some sort of weird distorted version of Ray Kurzweil's singularity, while also barely being out of Africa from an evolutionary standpoint. Like, we have barely just
Yeah.
left home and we're all over the globe, and we are thinking constantly about ways to fuck ourselves.
Yeah. And that's honestly a big part of it. Like, our brains have not had nearly enough time to evolve from becoming this creature that could spread across this planet and have the intelligence and various senses to use that and become this creature that adapted to almost every climate on this earth, which is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
But our brains got us to there, and then from there to now, massive, massive, massive sea change after sea change after sea change in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we haven't evolved, we haven't developed from that simple creature that just needed these brains to guide us around the earth and like live in these social little it's
Yeah,
we're we're trying to make a modern race car with like a wiring out of a car from the 50s.
yeah, yeah, and it does seem like there definitely needs to be, in any strategy to actually govern humans, to actually maintain a society, it seems like there needs to be a more explicit sympathy to that, because that is a universal part of the human condition. Everybody
Know
from
our
the
weaknesses and structure our government in a way that prevents those weaknesses from biting us in the ass.
Exactly. It can't just be about maintaining some idyllic freedom. It has to be
There has to be a
understanding
certain amount of
that.
pragmatism built into it.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be some definitions of what that idyllic freedom actually could look like functionally in the real world, that does have restraints on resources, time, things like that.
And yeah, and those restraints need to be built in firmly
Mm-hmm.
into the bedrock of the system. Like, I mean, yeah, it needs to be a lot more carrot and a lot less stick. I mean, there needs to be freedom in almost every direction, but with that freedom comes responsibility, and like there has to be these restraints built into the system to protect us from our weaknesses.
Yeah, Uncle Ben had it wrong. It's not with great power, it's with great freedom comes great responsibility.
And see, I like that because I mean, like, it acknowledges that there's always potential in front of us. There's
Mhm.
always progress. There's always something to strive for. So, yeah, power is one thing, but freedom is like a whole another kind of power. And like when you have that
Mhm.
freedom, like there's a responsibility. If we want to move forward in some sort of meaningful way as a society or species or whatever, then like have to use that freedom.
Yeah. And that are the freedoms that we have, that we can express, the extent of them is basically only limited by what we will take accountability for,
Yeah.
you know. Um so back it up a little bit again. So on the kind of tying some of the one big beautiful bill back to the Communist Manifesto, as we started out with. Um,
Yeah.
so a theme, especially in the first section of the Communist Manifesto, which is a definition of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, is the recurring cycle of crises and the recurring cycle of the deposition of at least regional, if not global, social orders and economic orders. That cyclical grind.
Well, like I said at the beginning, right out of the intro, that's what we've experienced our adult life in this cycle of economic crashes.
I had a few actually. I actually had a list of those that I wanted to mention really quick, just since I've been born in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not all of them by any means, but these are ones that really stand out. So, oil market crash in 1986, bond market crisis 1994, housing market crash 2008, COVID recession 2020. It's in my life four massive economic upheavals, and we're not even including one that every millennial brings up for sure, which is 9/11. We're not even throwing that into the mix. Constant economic upheaval and very little time to ever recover from it.
Yeah, and it's been squeezing that lower end of the economy just progressively harder and harder. With each cycle. It becomes a lot more expensive to be poor. And I mean that's where this big beautiful bill is really, really scraping as well. It's going to just continue to make it way, way more expensive to be poor.
Yes.
Than it already is. Like, the tax burden is going to shift towards the bottom of the economy in a massive way that just we cannot afford. Like, I'm throwing myself in with that. Like,
I mean, myself as well.
Like, especially when that's on the back of losing any sort of government assistance that, like, so like healthcare, like when that's coupled with losing that and either having to pay for that on your own or just go without, it becomes even more words.
Burdensome.
Yeah, all of that. However you want to put it. It's unsustainable. Like, there's no way you can financially sustain that. Like,
actually, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent begs to differ.
Oh wait, am I supposed to give up something like avocado toast again? Shoot.
No. It's great. Actually, it's awesome. It doesn't actually rely on us giving up anything. In fact, it relies on us consuming more, because, as always, the fix on the other side of one of these crises, or in the midst of one of these crises, is a mix of austerity of some shape, some way, but also squeezing every last drop of growth that we can get. It's always about not just income.
Yeah,
it's not
austerity
just about
for the
generating
poors
revenue,
and a tax break for the creators to pump more money into stock buybacks or.
Well, and they're not looking to, definitely with the stock buybacks and things like, but they're not looking to hold their profits steady. They're looking for consistent, constant growth. They need to consume more. It has to keep actively feeding itself larger and larger meals, or else it completely falls apart. And Scott Bessent gives that game away completely. A literal quote from Scott Bessent, after suggesting that the deficit scoring on the Big Beautiful Bill is a DC scoring. It's not a dynamic scoring based on what he thinks is actually going to happen. But Scott Bassett says, "What's important is that the economy grows faster than the debt."
Yeah, I heard this. We're gonna grow our way past that debt.
It's the Kansas experiment. Are you familiar with the Kansas
Yeah.
experiment?
Oh yeah.
Sam Brownback.
Yeah. Sam Brownback. And how did that work out for Kansas?
Republicans
I just can't recall.
overturning that shit 5 years later. Republicans were working to overturn that shit 5 years after. We should probably
that state right.
Oh, absolutely hosed it
Real
to
hard.
the tune of hundreds of millions. So to fill people in, so the Kansas experiment, as it's called, you could just look it up by that name, the Kansas experiment. You'll find a Wikipedia article about it. But basically, Governor Sam Brownback of Kansas had this brilliant idea based off of the Laffer curve. The Laffer curve is a suggestion that, as is very obvious, with very low tax rates, such as approaching zero, tax revenue will be low. And as you increase those tax rates, at a certain point, it gets to a maximum. And then if you keep taxing past that, you're actually going to lower revenue. And there's an arbitrary decision on, where you can place the top of that curve. But basically, Sam Brownback took this idea and said, what we should do right now to increase tax revenue in Kansas, we need to actually lower taxes so we can go back up the other side of that curve. Because right now we're taxing too much. Our tax revenue is too low because we're taxing too much. So what do? They dramatically lowered taxes, not just for businesses, but also for individuals, on the promise that the increased revenue, the increased business growth that would happen in Kansas would make up for those tax revenue shortfalls. And the promise was to expand access to healthcare, and specifically a big one was education. They promised to put a lot of this money into education.
They put a lot into that.
As I recall, one of the first things they cut to pay for the hundreds of millions of dollars over 5 years, that from 2012 when it was put in place to 2017, hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue that Kansas could not bring back with the growth from local businesses, apparently. They cut education.
Oh, yeah. Massively.
Like, of course. and it was
that was supposed to be the beneficiary of it, yeah.
And it was so dramatically bad that, again, Republicans in Kansas worked to overturn this policy.
But yet somehow Kansas keeps fucking electing Republicans.
Well, they got him out of this terrible Sam Brownback mess.
Oh, yeah. They do get some credit. They really solved that Sam Brownback problem.
They put out the fire.
They fixed the Kansas experiment.
They fixed the Kansas experiment.
Fixed the Kansas experiment.
It was a rigged experiment.
Jesus God.
And it's also funny too, tying back again to what we were talking about with communism. Communism's never been tried. Capitalists will say the same thing. We have all this burdensome regulation. We don't know how fantastic these companies will flourish if we just took away some of the burdensome regulation and the taxation. We have ample evidence of it in Kansas, and it fell on its face and broke its own fucking nose.
Yeah. Well, and we have plenty of historical evidence what companies will do in the absence of regulation as well. It's not like the market is going to police these companies in any meaningful way. It's not like the companies are going to hold one another accountable. They're just going to go back to dumping fucking petrochemicals in the Ohio River or whatever. And it's going to be back to where you can fucking set the Cuyahoga River on fire again before you know it. And worse and worse in a bazillion different ways.
I just watched Major League the other day, and the song. Oh God, what is that song about the Cuyahoga River? God, what is that song? They play that at the start of the movie. I laugh at. I think there's a lot of people that don't know about the Cuyahoga River. Don't know that there was a time where we literally had a river on fire, on fucking fire.
Yeah, the river would routinely catch fire, and this was
Yeah.
up into the 1970s, I think, before they really started to clean the river up. And now, honestly, it's a model of
Mhm.
that whole river system is a model of what can be done with proper remediation
Mhm.
and through regulations. It's like it's still an active riverway for economic uses and whatnot, but it's also now a river that's clean enough that like fish grow in it. You can actually
Right.
theoretically pull the fish out of it, need it. I don't think most people probably do at this point, but still, it's come a long way, baby.
Well,
But
it does
we're gonna
seem
turn that
like
clock back.
well, it does seem like exactly what you're talking about with vaccines and needing to see a baby literally dying of whooping cough before you have any empathy for the
Yeah.
population of people that could be affected. People might just need to see a fucking river on fire before they go, oh wow, we might need some
Oh, that's pretty
burdensome
bad.
economic regulations to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Who'd have thought that that company wouldn't just be good on their own?
Surprise, shocker, absolute shocker. Um, let's
Fucking
see.
idiots.
I had something else I literally had
I had a
something
thing for
else.
that.
I think actually we kind of yeah. So I think the other thing that's really interesting in all of this is that you've got uh a lot of Republicans right now, especially in the Senate, it sounds like, but in the House as well, that aren't really for this bill. But somehow, in the face of this current political climate, where Donald Trump is increasingly becoming unpopular, we saw, Elon Musk basically single-handedly throw an election in Wisconsin and then throw
Yeah.
himself out of the White House through his own
Which I
Kennedy
don't for
fueled
one
insanity.
moment believe that this is not
His work's done.
exactly where he wanted to be. And yeah, he is more than happy to be pieced out. He got everything he wanted and a million times more. Yeah, he doesn't need to be sticking around for this shit.
The only thing
His
about
money's
it
made.
is you can tell that he's still not happy about going, not just because of the expression of power that he could wield in that space, but
Oh no,
because
his
he
little
doesn't
ego.
like
His
people
fifis.
making fun of him and talking
Yeah,
shit about
he's
him.
such a fragile little dipshit.
He's such a baby.
He can't handle it.
He's such a baby.
Such a
He definitely can't
snowflake.
handle it. But there seems to be a lot of Republicans that are voting for this bill, and Senate Republicans. I think there's a few that are looking to make some adjustments to it, which I assume for their constituencies is going to be a lot to do with Medicare and Medicaid. But
Yeah, they're all going to get some little bone thrown their way. But
they're going to try to carve out a little bit of something for themselves before they inevitably pass it, probably. But I'm surprised, honestly, that they're actually afraid of some sort of electoral repercussions from being primaried specifically. It seems like
I don't know that they are they? I mean, like
that
there's a
seems
little
to be
bit of I think there's going to be a little bit of complaining, a little bit of gamesmanship about, like, we're going to lose a couple of these Republican voters, and they might, but they're not going to lose more than they have to. They're going to let one or two defectors go, and like, I don't know. I think it's going to miraculously pass, and Susan Collins will just send a sternly worded letter about it.
That sounds about right. I mean, that's definitely par for no matter what, whether she votes for it or not. Susan Collins is probably going to send a sternly worded letter. So, I am curious. I heard some rumblings about some procedural action to maybe require 60 votes on the bill, which could be interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, they're in charge. It would be incumbent upon them to enact that strategical or that.
I believe it's actually a
Right?
parliamentarian that's been in their position since 2012, as I recall.
Okay.
Because it is again like a Senate procedural thing. It's not something that the Senate themselves
Okay, so
gets to
the
like
majority leader
oversee.
couldn't just necessarily bury it or not allow it up on the floor.
Not directly, not procedurally, but through various political machinations could for sure. But that's something that I don't have a whole lot of details on, unfortunately. I wanted to research a little bit more of that before we got into to chatting again.
Yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more about that as well. I haven't kept up on this enough to know exactly where it's going in the Senate. But
yeah, it looks like it's going to be tied up for at least a few days or a week or two for some. But again, just some edge case stuff for these Senate Republicans largely, and I don't know. There's a world where they don't pass it, and it goes basically back to the House to make a bunch of adjustments before it gets back, to change some things around.
It could they
this could bounce
bounce
around
it
for a while.
and yeah.
I believe that their next
Which honestly would probably kind of help them too, because I mean, like, people are going to lose interest when this goes on for more than a few news cycles, even though it's going to have potentially catastrophic effects on their day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
American Idol's got a new thing happening, so like if it's
or just the belligerence of Trump himself, give him more time to put stuff on another pile that people are going to be paying attention to.
Yeah. They'll come up with some beautiful new big distraction from the fire hose bullshit, which is the brilliance of that, I suppose. That gives them a way to always move the narrative, even if it is something that should be politically damaging to them. Nothing seems to be politically damaging to them. So you just create some other bullshit to get people distracted, and somebody Nazi salutes or something, and everybody looks over here.
I think it's going to be an uptick in Trump's potentially completely feigned and maybe wrestling role playing kind of style arguing with Russia about Ukraine. He's consistently tried to play both sides with Russia and Ukraine, and he oscillates. He's a lot softer on the supporting Ukraine side. It's a lot of finger wagging at Russia, but he does seem to at least oscillate back to the finger wagging before he goes and says, well, Zelensky, you need to go ahead and just let your country be bombed and paved over.
At least on some level realizes that it would be massively unpopular, even probably amongst the Republican electorate, to be just like, Vladimir Putin is great. He's the absolute best. We're friends now, and nuts to Ukraine. They can burn. Let's just give it to Russia, and that would still be politically damaging a little bit. You can't go that far yet.
Not yet. Time will tell, though. And certainly, if the bill as it's written passes, and this escape clause from basically any sort of responsibility in responding legally to what the courts will
well, I mean, the Supreme
say.
Court's already said that anything he does as an official act is completely immune. So
yeah, well, not just
got that
immune,
backdrop.
He's immune from prosecution, but that he can do things that are currently seen as requiring oversight, like it's actually a congressional action that would do this, not an executive action, things like that. Basically, as we were talking about earlier, the ability to just completely avoid court injunctions, if that goes through, then I mean, we are in such a wild gloves all the way off scenario at that
brave
point.
new fucking world.
Yeah.
And we already arguably are. I mean, Congress has already arguably ceded its own constitutional mandate in letting the executive affect the budget. Like, the executive should not, it has no legal authority, no constitutional framework to affect budgetary things that have already been appropriated. It can't affect that. That is strictly, per the Constitution, Congress's function, and this has been adjudicated throughout history, and it's pretty fucking settled that Congress controls the purse strings. But yet, they fucked with that, and fucking crickets from the legislative branch of our government. So,
and the avenue that I actually thought would do a lot more to restrain Donald Trump, which would be the judiciary, as far as restraining him from like the most egregious things. Just because, again, judges don't like to be told that they don't have the power to tell you to fucking not do something. Roberts,
I would not have expected them to roll over and acquiesce nearly as hard as they have.
Yeah, Roberts
made a couple
Roberts
little
has done
moments
nothing.
where they pushed back, just almost in a showy kind of way. They've pretended to protect their own authority at least, but in any sort of meaningful way, no, they are rolling over so hard. It's
frightening.
It's pitiful. It's obvious.
It's frightening that in a lot of avenues, not by any means to say that this is that they're completely successful in this, but in a lot of avenues to gaining power, the only people that really stand in the way of Trump succeeding are Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane. But there's just not enough.
How fucking terrible is that?
Yeah.
She seems to be, honestly, maybe legitimately a little pissed off and disenfranchised. I can't tell if she is maybe legitimately not on board with what's going on anymore. I'm curious to see how she behaves moving forward.
Kavanaugh's a little bit that way too, and it mostly comes down to like structural stuff. Again, it comes down to judges don't like to be told no, and they're not doing very much at all to protect Congress.
There.
Yeah, like they're not stepping out of their way at all to protect Congress.
Rebel when he can get away with rebelling, but when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, they're all going to be on the same team. So
I guess it depends on how many beers he's had that day.
How many beers he's boofed that day.
Well, everyone he's had, he's boofed. So
not necessarily. I mean,
well, that day
you could be boofing and well, yeah.
Listen, you don't start drinking until 5, but boofing's all day. You can start that shit with your coffee.
Yeah, it's boof o'clock somewhere. For sure.
All right, Travis. So what do you say? How about we wrap up this first part and give ourselves a little bit of a break and maybe come back and chat a little bit more? What do you think?
Yeah, I could do a few more minutes. We could do
okay.
That. Definitely a break is a necessity right about now.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this is probably going to just be part 1, and then we'll have
to be continued.
2.
All right. Back in a flash.
All right. Sounds great.
Oh, jeez.